Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the week starting on Monday, July the 15th, 2024. Now, let me start by just giving you an overview of the structure of this video. To begin with, I'm going to look at the main astrological events as I see it taking place over the week. And actually, there is a lot going on this week. The week starts with a Mars conjunct Uranus on Monday, and on Sunday there is a full moon. So I'll be going through all of these events. And having done that, I will look at how these events may impact certain famous people. And I'm thinking in particular of the Mars-Uranus conjunction. And you can see in the thumbnail some of the people I'll be talking about. I'll be talking about Benjamin Natanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. I think this Mars-Uranus conjunction could hit him. It also could impact Tucker Carlson, who has got his sun in Taurus, late Taurus, conjunct Algol. And another person is Angela Rayner. I don't know if you've heard of her. If you're not in the UK, you might not have heard of her, but she is the Deputy Prime Minister. Following the election, which Labour won, she has become Deputy Prime Minister. And I do think that this Mars-Uranus conjunction really could have an impact on her. And then, of course, there is Donald Trump. He's got his Mars at 26 Leo, so the Mars-Uranus conjunction this week does hit his Mars. And having looked at these famous people, I'm going to do an I Ching reading. And my I Ching reading is going to be about this week, what the week's going to be like. And this I Ching reading is divided into 4 sections. It's a general view, then money, then business and career, and then relationships. Just a reminder, if you don't want your I Ching read, this I Ching only applies to people who watch the I Ching section. So if you don't watch the I Ching segment, it doesn't apply to you. Anyway, let's start by looking at the main astrological events. So what we have here, that actually is a chart of the USA, which I think actually could be impacted by this Mars-Uranus conjunction. But let's start with the beginning of the week. So this is the beginning of the week, when Sunday turns to Monday, when the 14th turns to the 15th. And those are the positions at the beginning of a week, and they are set for New York. There's no particular reason why they have to be set for New York. They just are as a matter of convenience. So you can see the week starts with a moon in Scorpio. That's quite a difficult placing for the moon to start with. For the week to start with, the moon is in the Via Combusta, coming towards the end of the Via Combusta. So Monday, for much of Monday, the moon is in a part of the sky which can bring a certain amount of instability. Things happen which just weren't planned. And then we have got a Mars-Uranus conjunction. So this Mars-Uranus conjunction that I've been going on and on and on about arguably hits peak impact on Monday, and I will be talking more about this conjunction later in the video. But this Mars-Uranus conjunction does make things a little bit dangerous. So I think for all of us, we have to be careful. We mustn't do anything stupid that entails risk, and I suppose this particularly applies to what we're doing in a physical sense. So, it's not a good day for example, climbing the north face of the Eiger. And at the same time, we need to be thinking about our own frustrations, feeling angry about things. And of course, if we feel angry about things, we might push this anger out. And so our anger might create a difficult situation. But this Mars-Uranus conjunction, I think, is more likely to be collective than personal. It's about what other people are doing, the events out there, and it's just a time, I think, of great instability. Now, you could argue that this Mars-Uranus conjunction is going to be stronger on Tuesday than on Monday. Now, you might think that's strange because the Mars-Uranus conjunction is exact on Monday. I suppose I should tell you when exactly it's going to be exact. So this Mars-Uranus conjunction is exact at 5 minutes past 3 in the afternoon in London. So that's going to be in the morning in the Americas, going to be in the evening if you're in Australia or New Zealand. So the exactitude does depend. But you see, what's happening on Tuesday is that the moon continues moving through Scorpio, and it moves into late Scorpio. And so what that means is the moon is making an opposition to Mars and an opposition to Uranus. So Tuesday may actually see this conjunction actually being on sort of peak form. There could be real stresses coming out into the open as we move into Tuesday. And you could say that that's the main event of the week. So the week starts on quite a dramatic note. Then moving on in the week, you've got Thursday. Thursday we have a quintile between Jupiter and Neptune. Now this, because these are slow-moving planets involved, the quintile between Jupiter and Neptune is unlikely just to be about Thursday. It could impact, well, perhaps the whole week, but perhaps particularly Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Jupiter, quintile, Neptune. So what does that mean? So Jupiter-Neptune as a pair can represent high hopes. Hopes which might be unrealistic. It can also be very spiritual, believing that there's something out there, something that's beyond ourselves. And then we have the quintile. This is not a regular aspect like a conjunction or a square, very easy, or at least relatively easy to work out what they mean. But a quintile can be about style. So with Jupiter, quintile, Neptune, we're trying to find something, and we are perhaps feeling we have to make the effort. Perhaps the world around us is a bit boring, and we need to make a special effort to find interest and meaning. And some of us might have a set of beliefs which are very important to us, and it may feel that somehow we have to get these beliefs out into the open. People have to understand these beliefs. So if you're a missionary, you of course won't be watching this video, but if you happen to be a missionary and by some random chance you are watching this video, then this Jupiter quintile Neptune could be very inspiring. You perhaps may have a vision of God or of some supernatural entity or some supernatural feeling about the universe, about the cosmos, and you might want to bring it down and make it real at some level. And it may just feel that you're close to realizing whatever you're looking for, regardless of whether you're a missionary or a psychic or anyone that regards supernatural and psychic stuff as important, or divine religious stuff as important. You're going to want to manifest it. And I suppose the reason I talked about a missionary, because a missionary is someone who tries to convert. And I think there might be something a little bit messianic about the Jupiter quintile Neptune. Though it's not just about religion, it could be about politics. having a strong set of political beliefs that you want to bring down to earth, that you want to make real. Then on Friday, we have Mercury by quintile Neptune. So that Mercury by quintile Neptune, it kind of picks up on the Jupiter by quintile Neptune. So it emphasizes the Jupiter quintile Neptune sort of even more so, and that's on Friday the 19th. So again, it's about having ideas, otherworldly ideas perhaps, and just wanting them to be real. Then as we move into the end of a week, well, Saturday sees Mars sextile Neptune. It also sees Mars moving into Gemini. And for many of us, Mars moving into Gemini may be a bit of a relief, because Mars in Taurus has been perhaps somewhat difficult. I mean, it's recently been conjunct Algol, and that also needs to be pointed out. I mean, that's something I perhaps should have said about the Mars conjunct Uranus at the beginning of the week. It's not just any Mars conjunct Uranus happening on Monday. It's Mars conjunct Uranus conjunct Algol, that fixed star that is often associated with death and destruction. But with Mars moving out of Taurus, Mars is moving out of a sign in which it doesn't actually work very well. Mars is in its detriment in Taurus. So Mars moving into Gemini just may feel like a big relief that we have space. And with Mars moving into Gemini, you know, we're going to be more flexible, although we could be a little more unstable, perhaps, putting lots of energy into lots of different things, and we could scatter our resources. So that is one danger of Mars in Gemini. And Mars in Gemini is not just a one-off event. Mars will stay in Gemini for quite some time. To be precise, Mars stays in Gemini until Mars will, I should be able to tell you, Mars moves into Cancer on September the 4th. So Mars stays in Gemini until September the 4th. So it is a time when we could find ourselves scattering our energies quite a lot, and a lot of our energies may be going into what we say and what we communicate. Then on Sunday, we've got a full moon, and we have got Venus sextile Jupiter. Venus sextile Jupiter, very fortunate aspect. Venus and Jupiter are the two benefics. So it may be in some ways that the week ends on quite a fortunate note. If we are focusing on the right kind of things, you know, Venus sextile Jupiter, if we try to be positive and optimistic, maybe things can work in our favour. And perhaps we have a capacity to make things better by bringing some happiness down to earth and shining our happy light all around us. So that's Venus sextile Jupiter. Yet, also on Sunday, there is a full moon. I don't actually want to talk about this full moon too much. In fact, I don't really want to talk about this full moon at all, because I've got a lot to say on this full moon. You know, that requires a separate video, but I think you just need to be aware that the week does end on a full moon. So I now want to go back to Mars conjunct Uranus. You know, it's an aspect I've gone on and on and on about. You know how it is in astrology. If you get completely obsessed about an aspect, and I think a lot of people are obsessed about this aspect, if you obsess about an aspect or a transit or something going on in your chart astrologically, what very often happens is that you end up finding that actually it doesn't work. There was a book by Leon Festinger and others, I think it was written in the 1950s, called When Prophecy Fails. And it was about this cult in suburban America that believed that the UFOs were going to land and there were going to be disasters all over the place, and this was it was going to almost be like a rapture kind of event, and they got really excited about it, and they just waited and waited and waited, and they made a mistake of sort of choosing a particular day and for this event to happen. Of course, the day happened, and nothing happened. It was the day. It was a big anticlimax. Now, Leon Festinger talked about his concept of cognitive dissonance and what these people tried to do to explain why the disaster didn't happen. They said, well, maybe it was because we prayed. Yeah, that was it. We were praying a lot about this disaster, and so our prayers worked because nothing happened. Well, we don't really have that excuse with Mars conjunct Uranus. When we get excited about an event, we need to look at when prophecy fails here. So it just may be a complete damp squib. That's always a possibility. And when you get excited about something, when you really focus on a transit in your own life, whether it's good or bad, almost that focus disempowers the transit. But still, I do think that this Mars-Uranus conjunction is a big deal. If you look at it historically, it can be very violent. It can be unfortunate, and it is conjunct Algol. Algol is a really bad fixed star. It's the worst fixed star there is, and with Mars conjunct Algol, things can go wrong. Not necessarily for us, but they can go wrong on a collective level. And you might think with Mars conjunct Uranus, you might think of terrorism, other attacks, warfare in general, people suffering because of warfare, people suffering because of violence. So do be careful. One thing, always wear eye protection with Mars conjunct Algol. Now, the reason I say that is because I was looking at Eberton Hoffman, his book on the fixed stars, and they go through the fixed stars, and Eberton has a long bit on Algol, and it's not just eyes. In fact, it wasn't eyes, it's teeth. And he has a long list of links. Sorry, forget what I said about eyes. I didn't mean to say eyes. I meant teeth. He has a long list of people who had problems with their teeth or had difficult teeth with Mars-Uranus conjunct Algol. So perhaps we should watch out for accidents regarding teeth. So, for example, if you are eating this week, I don't know, when did my teeth start to fail? When was it? How old was I when my teeth? When I started, late 30s for me was when my teeth started to weaken. When a little bit of cereal could destroy a tooth. So watch out for what you eat. Watch out for hard bits of stuff or rocks in what you're eating, or I don't know, toffee, whatever it is. Do be very careful with your teeth. And when you're looking at sort of accidents, make sure you have mouth guards. It depends what you're doing, but really watch your teeth this week. I'm just following Eberton's line on this. I don't think there's any particular reason, theoretically, why Algol should be connected with teeth, but I'm just passing on what Eberton says with Mars conjunct Uranus. So I'm sure nothing bad will happen to your teeth, but just look after your teeth. No harm in looking after your teeth. Now, looking at some people who may be impacted by this conjunction between Mars and Uranus. And I'll start with Claire Rayner. You probably haven't heard of her if you're not in the UK, which is very much a national politician. And so here is her chart. She was born on March 28th, 1980. I don't have a time of birth. She is obviously relatively young for being a deputy prime minister. She, I would have said, is pretty sort of working class. She came from a fairly humble background. She worked as a carer. I think she maybe became pregnant at 16 or left school, early. So you could say, but she's very genuine, perhaps. But here is her chart, and looking at her chart, I just feel that she's all Aries, really. I know she's not all Aries, that she's got other stuff in her chart, but perhaps all you need to know about her is that she's got Sun in Aries. I just get the impression that she's someone who makes a lot of noise. I wonder how much substance there is to her, but she is popular amongst a large section in the British Labour Party. I must say I don't really know a great deal about her, and I'm sort of making a lot of assumptions here. And she has a Venus-Mars square, and there's her Venus-Mars square, and Uranus is opposition her Venus, and Mars is square her Venus, and Mars is square her Uranus. I think she boasted that during Prime Minister's question times she would cross her legs and uncross her legs while Boris Johnson was making speeches or something like that, in an attempt to distract him. I mean, that kind of fits that chart, doesn't it, with Venus-Mars square. Venus-Mars square, you could associate that with sexuality, and you've got Uranus opposition Venus, Uranus sexed square Mars, and I believe in terms of her midpoints, let me just have a look at her midpoints, she has got... she hasn't got sun. She hasn't got anything there. So just wanted to look at her sun midpoints. It's always good to look at the sun midpoints. So there is her sun relatively close to... Sun is relatively close to the semi-square with Venus, and so that's her chart. But it's the Mars I'm looking at, and it is the fact that she has Mars square Uranus in her natal chart, hitting Venus as well. So that means that there is this conjunction between Mars and Uranus happening at the beginning of a week, which is right on her Mars. Now, she's obviously very happy now that the Labour Party have won, and she's Deputy Prime Minister. But maybe she's going to make some mistake somewhere along the line. Maybe she could embarrass herself. I think that is possible. I think she does have to be very careful there with the fact that Mars is conjunct Uranus on her Mars, and it's also hitting a major configuration in her chart. She has Mars square Uranus. She is vulnerable to the Mars-Uranus cycle. So I would be watching Angela Rayner at the beginning of the week, see what she's up to. But, it might be a big event. It might be an important event, but of course we might not notice. She does have a private life. There are things going on behind closed doors. She might have a minor accident. I mean, who knows? In other words, what I'm saying is Mars conjunct Uranus might have an impact on her, but we might not see it. Now, someone born actually very close to Angela Rayner, who is also involved in British politics, is Suella Braverman. Now, she was born less than a week after Angela Rayner. So Mars is retrograde. Mars is not quite close. Mars is not quite as close to the Mars-Uranus conjunction as it was for Angela Rayner. But this is a woman who does have Mars square Uranus. Now, Suella Braverman is on the other side of the political spectrum. She's a conservative, and she is a right-wing conservative, and a lot of people think that she's too right-wing. A lot of other people think she's great, so it kind of depends on your political perspective. She's very critical of her party, for her party not being sympathetic to the needs and the desires of the British people, for example, over immigration. And like Angela Rayner, she makes a lot of noise. And so with her Mars-Uranus square, she might be very sensitive to the Mars-Uranus cycle. And so we might be hearing more about Suella Braverman over the next few days. I mean, I suppose it's inevitable that we'll be hearing about her, because as I said, she does make a lot of noise. But the Conservative Party is in meltdown after its massive election defeat, so we'll probably be hearing from her quite a lot. Will there be a Mars-Uranus event? I don't know. It's probably just going to be more of the same. So there are a lot of politicians who are being hit by this. And then we move to Israel and Benjamin Natanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu, we don't know his exact time of birth. He's almost certainly got Sagittarius rising. And so with this chart, we've got Mars. There's Mars at 26 degrees 54 Leo. So that means that the Mars-Uranus conjunction is square his Mars exactly. And we already know that Benjamin Netanyahu is in a high-pressure situation. There's always stuff going on in Gaza and in Israel at the best of times. And so with Mars-Uranus conjunction square his Mars, there may be just more and more events. Maybe there will be an event in Gaza or in Israel that he has to deal with, which is more spectacular than usual, which gets more media coverage than usual. And he himself has to be careful with Mars-Uranus conjunction square his Mars. It's okay if you're Angela Rayner or Suella Braverman having Mars-Uranus conjunction square your Mars. You don't have access to the level of military force that he does. He's got access to all the Mars-Uranus stuff he can ever want. So he is in a position to really be impacted by this Mars-Uranus conjunction. And there are more politicians. There are, in Germany, Annalena Baerbock, the foreign minister. She's, I believe, not particularly popular, but she is, as we know, she is a major warmonger. She's got Venus conjunct Uranus in her chart. She just wants this war between NATO and Ukraine to just continue, to do everything it can to beat Russia. It doesn't matter what you risk. And she has got the Mars-Uranus conjunction square her Venus. Now, Venus is about relationships. Venus conjunct Uranus is about unstable relationships, not just in a personal sense, but in terms, presumably, of her political partners and whatever. And so, from a political point of view, the Mars-Uranus conjunction may actually put her under a fair amount of pressure. And maybe she'll make a mistake, she'll do something impulsive. But again, it might be to do with her private life, and we never get to hear about it. But I do think that Annalena Baerbock is under a bit of pressure with this conjunction. And I suppose I better mention Justin Trudeau. So Justin Trudeau, the Mars-Uranus conjunction is hitting his midheaven. It's getting close. And this conjunction on his midheaven is maybe difficult. There may be crises to deal with, and don't forget, Mars is about to change sign. Mars is about to move into Gemini. So Mars, as it moves into Gemini, will be hitting Justin Trudeau's Saturn. So things may be hotting up for Justin Trudeau, and things might not go right for him. And I think that's all the politicians. Oh, there's one more politician I have to talk about, and that is, of course, Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump, like Justin Trudeau, has Taurus on the midheaven. So this Mars-Uranus conjunction is reasonably close to his midheaven. And that could cause events, especially as he has got Mars square his midheaven. So with Mars square his midheaven, Mars rising, and he's going to have a Mars conjunct Uranus on Algol on his midheaven, square his Mars. I suppose I'd have to say that Donald Trump has to watch his security. I mean, there must be people out there who might want to do him harm. And I think, he's got to be careful. I think that he may be a target in someone's eyes. So, yeah, he has to watch for his security. He also has to watch for his own behaviour. I mean, I know that he usually gets away with it, but Mars conjunct Uranus square his Mars. He's in his late 70s, of course. We don't want him to fall over and break a leg or break a hip. So he has to be a bit careful in terms of his health. Not having accidents, not pushing himself, but his enemies, I think, are going to be strong, and people are going to be trying to get him at numerous levels. But I suppose if it's Trump, he's probably going to want to do something to really get more and more attention. It's going to not be any problem for Trump to be in the news, of course. I mean, it's never a problem for Trump to be in the news, but I think that this Mars-Uranus conjunction hitting squaring his Mars, I think a little bit of caution is required there. And we shouldn't forget that this Mars-Uranus conjunction is conjunct Algol, and it's on his midheaven. So, yeah, Donald has to watch it. And there is Tucker Carlson, just brief mention of Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has his sun at 25 degrees 38 Taurus. He's got a new moon, actually, pretty close to Algol. Now, that Uranus square his sun has, you could say, well, it's already passed. And Mars is already just moving away from the conjunction of his sun. But on the other hand, the moment of exactitude, when Mars and Uranus is exactly conjunct his the sun, yeah, it could be a bit of a problem. Like Trump, he has to watch out. I'm sure he has enemies, and he has to watch out for accidents. And he may do something hasty, which he hadn't quite thought through. Remember, he's got Sun trine Jupiter, so that is another thing that he needs to look out for. Now, it might sound good having Sun trine Jupiter, but if you've got Mars Uranus on your Sun, trine your Jupiter, it might just blow it all up. So yeah, he does need to watch how he goes. And a couple of countries have got relevant planets. The United States. What interests me about the United States is the fact that the United States has got its moon at 2710 Aquarius. So this Mars-Uranus conjunction is, if assuming we've got the time right for America's chart, would be in the 6th house, and it would be square America's moon. And Mars-Uranus conjunction square America's moon. The moon might be the people. The people are stirred up. There is a lot of anger. And this Mars-Uranus conjunction, it's okay. It's not exact, but Uranus will be very soon going stationary, retrograde, square America's moon, and of course Mars is going to be squaring America's moon this week. So I think that could stir things up. The people are going to be angry, and there may be events which just get people annoyed, but it just adds to the stress that the United States is undergoing. And finally, I should point out that this Mars-Uranus conjunction has an impact on the horoscope of Ukraine. So Ukraine has Mercury at 26 degrees to Leo. And so with that Mercury, Mars and Uranus are hitting Ukraine's Mercury. Now you could say, well, is that really a big deal? It's just Mercury. But we have to look at what's going on with Mercury. Mercury's got, Ukraine has, when it declared its independence in 1991, Ukraine has that Mercury-Jupiter conjunction at 25, 26 Leo. That's the first point. Second point is that if you look at Ukraine's midpoints, Mercury is on the Sun-Moon midpoint. In fact, Mercury and Jupiter are on the Sun-Moon midpoint. So when you've got a planet on the Sun-Moon midpoint, it very much becomes part of you. It's a very important part of your expression. And I think during this war, we've really seen Ukraine use that Mercury conjunct Jupiter on the Sun-Moon midpoint. And I'm thinking in particular of Ukraine's amazing ability to run its propaganda machine. You know, the war has been sort of based on lies, basically. Ukraine has been able to create an incredible impression about how the war has been progressing, which has, in many cases, has been based on plain lies. You know, Ukraine is very much this concept: if you fake it, you can make it. That's kind of what they're trying to do, and giving a false impression about how the war is going. About Russian casualties, their casualties, underestimating their casualties, overestimating the other side's casualties, using every event to put it in, to give it a good spin for themselves. And, it has worked very well, and the president has been very effective at it. So that is really, part of the engine of what Ukraine actually is. But this complex Mercury-Jupiter conjunction on the Sun-Moon midpoint, such an important part of the Ukrainian war effort, is under pressure because they have got Mars is now square Mercury, square Jupiter. Mars is on Algol. Uranus is square Mercury, square Jupiter. So it may be that over the week, at some level, this unravels. And somehow Ukraine may get caught up in their own lies. I mean, that is possible. But it's also just the Sun-Moon midpoint. The Sun-Moon midpoint is the cosmic marriage. It's about harmony. And then they've got Mars and Uranus impacting it. So I think that in terms of realization, perhaps about the way the war is going, maybe particular events which really bring it home, I think that this Mars-Uranus conjunction could be very difficult for Ukraine. Okay, that is all I'm going to say regarding the astrology. Have fun with this Mars-Uranus conjunction, and also be very careful. I think it could be quite dangerous. And I now want to look at this week from the perspective of the I Ching. So when I do the I Ching, just remember that if you do not want your I Ching to be read, you don't have to watch this last part of the video, because this last part of the video only applies to people who actually watch it, and that's all part of the question, because the question I'm asking is, what is the week starting on Monday, July the 15th, going to be like for those watching the I Ching segment of this video? Okay, so that was the question I asked, and I'm going to answer this question using 4 broad sections. I'm going to give a sort of a general answer, then I'm going to look at it from the perspective of money, then business and career, and finally relationships. So, the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 40. So hexagram 40 gives us a sense that we were in a difficult situation. Things were perhaps not going right, and we were wondering, how are we going to get out of it? And so what do we do? And what this hexagram is suggesting is that we do have one opportunity at least for escape. So if you're in a difficult situation, things aren't working, then now, this week, you have an opportunity to get out. So don't miss that opportunity. Now, what is interesting about this hexagram is that, there's always some moving lines, and sometimes there are no moving lines, and it's all about probability. And usually it's sort of 1, maybe 2 moving lines. But in this hexagram, what I got 5 moving lines. And I think the fact that there are 5 moving lines in this hexagram, the second line moves, third line, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And I think that may reflect the fact that astrologically it really is quite a busy week. Really, there's a huge amount going on. The week starts with Mars conjunct Uranus. It ends with a full moon. And on the way, we've got Jupiter quintile Neptune, we've got Venus sextile Jupiter, a lot of action this week. And so it's perhaps not surprising that with all of this week, with so much happening, that we've got 5 moving lines. And these 5 moving lines, it's possible that to an extent they tell a story. I mean, that is maybe one way of looking at it. The second moving line moves, and with the second moving line, that's telling us that there are people we need to get rid of, and so part of a process of deliverance is delivering ourselves from people who are not doing us any good. Maybe they are plotting, scheming, planning, they don't respect us, and we need to recognize who these people are, and we need to make the appropriate move. And so then the third line moves, and the third line is perhaps about us through our own behavior causing trouble, causing ourselves problems. The whole point is to deliver ourselves from a dangerous situation. That's what it's all about. What we don't want to do is create a dangerous situation. And one way we can create a dangerous situation is by not being modest. And I'm thinking particularly of money. It's very important not to flaunt our money. We must really, dress down, give the impression that we don't have money. We must make sure that in terms of what we're doing, we don't have anything immediately available to steal. for example, walking down the street looking at an $1,000 cell phone, that is a bad idea. And when you're talking to people, don't give any impression that you've got more money than you have. In fact, you should try and give the impression that you have less money than you have. Really give the impression that there is nothing there. And I think that you'll be left alone. But if you try to sort of talk things up, it's like one of those prizes where the prize is a Rolls Royce, and if you haven't got much money and you win a Rolls Royce as a prize, then you're not in a position to run a Rolls Royce. You should, if you win a Rolls Royce, you should immediately sell it. What you don't do, and if you live in very humble circumstances, but you just happen to have a Rolls Royce, you are a target. And of course, you can't afford to run the Rolls Royce, so you mustn't have pretensions. That's very important. That's a very important part of how you protect yourself. And what else you need to do, I think, is consider that around you there may be people who are flattering you. They don't really like you that much, but they think you might be useful. And so it might be a good time to be delivering yourself from people who are just hangers-on. They flatter you, but what do they really have to offer? Do they really wish you well? No, I don't think so. And just in general, there are inferior people hanging around who you just need to get rid of. You don't need them around you. And then we have the top line, and this top line is about shooting a hawk. Obviously, shooting a hawk is not something you should be doing. But a hawk represents, in I Ching world, the hawk represents someone who is quite evil and dark and not up to no good. And so by shooting the hawk, you can somehow deliver yourself from someone who wishes doesn't wish you well. So who is that person? Obviously, you shouldn't shoot them. You should just get rid of them, distance yourself from them. So that is the process by which deliverance is working through. And it's a week in which you can, in general, just really free yourself from something. And then this hexagram 40, does change. It changes to hexagram 53, which is development. So having delivered yourself from whatever it is you need to deliver yourself from, having broken free, you can finally focus on quiet, persistent, developing. Nothing spectacular, but I think that you will sort of achieve solid results. Turning to money, I think there does seem to be a sense in which financially you are in danger. You may be on the verge of making a mistake. You could have been pressurized into doing something that you shouldn't be doing, and you're on the verge of doing it. Some of you may have airs and graces. You may be spending money inappropriately, or as I said when I was talking about this hexagram from a general perspective, you may be flaunting your money. You may not think that you're flaunting your money, but perhaps you are. You're perhaps giving the impression that you've got money when maybe you haven't got money. You're just going above your station. People are thinking maybe that you've got more money than you've actually got, and because of that, you are making yourself vulnerable. So it's going to be very important that you are super modest when it comes to your finances. really do give the impression that you haven't got any money, that you really are poor. And then I think people will just leave you alone. But the chances of being manipulated, deceived, even a target of theft, do go down if you can really give the impression that that you haven't got a great deal of money. That's what you should do. And there are hangers on. There are still people who want money from you. Maybe you know them, maybe they're relatives, I don't know, but you need to get rid of the hangers on. You need to look after your own finances. And with deliverance, I do get the impression that you are on the verge of making a financial mistake. Remember, this video is entirely for entertainment purposes. I'm not giving financial advice. But if you look at the thing theoretically, it does indicate on the verge making a financial mistake. But you haven't quite made that mistake. And so you do have a chance now to pull back before you've made the commitment. Okay, you might have made a promise. You said you're going to give someone money, but you can get out of that promise. Okay, if it's legally binding, I don't know, I suppose that's a different matter. But it does seem in general that escape from financial disaster it really is possible. And then this hexagram moves to hexagram 53, which is development. And so with 53, with development, perhaps by the end of the week you can be slowly, gradually starting to sort your finances out, making sure the books balance. And so do the right thing, and you can not only escape financial danger, but you can actually start to put your finances on a good footing. Turning to business and career, I don't think that things are great, at least to begin with. If you're in business or you have your own business, there seems to be a risk that you could make a mistake, or maybe you're in the process of making a mistake, or you're perhaps in a process of expanding, or maybe hiring someone, or maybe you feel you need a piece of machinery. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is, you're making decisions. Or perhaps if you're not in business but you're looking for a job, you may be about to sign up for a job or make a decision about doing something in terms of work. Could be going to a new job, leaving a job, but you're about to make a decision which may be the wrong decision, and you may be being pushed by other people who can't necessarily be trusted, and it seems that you haven't quite made this decision. So with deliverance, there's an escape. You can take a step back and start to consider what you're doing, why you're doing it, whether it's a good idea. And if you're in a job, we also see deliverance because you might be about to make a decision, about to make a commitment, or about to take an action which may actually be very unfortunate. You know it's risky, but you kind of feel a bit committed to it. But you have not passed the point of no return. So before you pass the point of no return, you can pull back, and then that takes us to a different hexagram. And by the end of a week, it's not about deliverance, it's about development. So by the end of a week, provided you don't make the key mistake, I think you're going to be making good progress by Friday, perhaps, maybe in the run up to the full moon, and things should be okay, provided of course you haven't already completely messed things up by making the big mistake. But with development, things are starting to move again. But slowly. And, I should say that earlier in the week, try not to trust people. Well, you may think they can be trusted to do something, but who knows what's going on behind your back. So just be careful on every level. Few people are your friends, again, especially at the beginning of the week. But by the end of the week, I do think that you can make good progress in your work and in your business, perhaps getting new business, but take it slowly. There's no hurry. And finally, there is relationships. Do consider all the relationships you're in, particularly new relationships, because you may be starting to get involved with someone. It may not be about romance. It may be a business partnership. It may be a friendship. Someone you're starting to get involved with, and it's not a good idea. You know it's not a good idea. It may be about an existing relationship. It may be about some kind of commitment, and you can feel yourself getting pulled in, but it seems to be very dangerous. And I think it's a time when you should be looking at how you can disentangle yourself from certain people. These people do not wish you well, whoever they are. You've got to look at your own situation. And of course, what I'm saying may be completely inappropriate to you. I can't expect this I Ching reading to cover everything and to cover all people's, everyone's situation. But if relationships are important to you, then you do need to tread carefully, and you should be trying to distance yourself from certain people rather than get closer, because some people cannot do you any good. You recognize it, but can you actually implement it? It's just easier to just go with the flow, get closer to someone, make commitments, and just get yourself into a difficult situation. But if you are trying to get rid of a relationship, trying to end a relationship, then now might be the time to do it, because it is about deliverance. You can get, if someone's messing your life up, the positive side of the thing is you can get free this week. That's something that really can happen. And then that moves to the second hexagram, which is development. And so by the end of the week, relationships are okay. Having understood the big crises, got over the big crises, then you and someone else can slowly get closer. But it should never be dramatic. Dramatic moves in relationships this week should be avoided at all costs. It's all about slow development, because if it's slow development, that means that you always have options. You're never committed. You can change your approach, and in that way you can be doing the right thing. Not just in terms of yourself, but also to the other person. So, although the week looks a bit dangerous from a relationship perspective, I think that by the end of the week, things should be sorting themselves out. And that's it. Those are my I Ching forecasts, and thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found this video of some interest. If you did enjoy this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed and you enjoyed the video, of course, I would be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again very soon.